events here at Turning Point USA's America Fest. You can watch Kayleigh McEnany speak live.
You guys are at the front line of freedom, of liberty, of justice.
This is the greatest nation on earth.
Fight for the last best hope on earth.
America is our home.
America
that is a gift
is our home.
We get to live in
that is a gift we get to live in America.
That's the only thing we're here for, is to save America.
What's going on, Phoenix?
Calling all based patriots, meme lords, and cute conservatives, Student Action Summit is happening 2022, Tampa, Florida, July 22nd through the 24th. You don't want to miss it. You'll make lifelong friends, you'll probably meet your soulmate, and you'll be able to network with the biggest names in the conservative movement. Sign up now at TPUSA.com.
So much for coming. It's so nice to see a full room. Before we get started, the university asked me to run through our audience guidelines and expectations real quick, so I'm just going to run down that. The University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee embraces the principles of free speech and the resulting free exchange of ideas. To assure that the speaker can be heard, the audience can hear and see, and the event is safe, the following guidelines have been set by the UWM administration in accordance with the Wisconsin Administrative Code. All aisles, exits, and passageways must be kept clear, so please remain seated during the event. No sticks or standards shall be permitted in any assembly in a university building. No visual obstructions that obstruct the view of the audience shall be permitted. For verbal and sound demonstration limitations, noise levels that impede the program's progress or the audience's ability to hear shall not be permitted. Objects may not be thrown. Force or violence notification, behavior that infringes on the safety of others or endangers university property also shall not be permitted. Your cooperation with these guidelines and the university staff is greatly appreciated. Additionally, the event is being filmed, photographed, and live streamed on the internet. By your presence at the event, you agree that you may be photographed and recorded without compensation, credit, or any other consideration as part of the streaming web, video, and any other media and subsequent advertising and publicity. Once again, thank you so much for being here.
Hello, everyone. How are we feeling? So I know you guys didn't come to listen to me talk, so I'll keep it short. But first of all, I just want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you for all showing up tonight. We have a packed room, and it's always great to see a room full of patriots like this. So thank you all for being here, first and foremost. Second, we've got a huge group of volunteers here. None of this would be possible without you guys. So thank you to the volunteers. We have a lot of staff who have also put forth a lot of effort into making sure that this is all possible and it goes smoothly. We've got AV, we've got photographers, we've got university staff who've helped set this up, and a lot of people who work for Turning Point helping plan this. A lot of work has gone into everything that you see here tonight. So thank you to everybody here who helped out beforehand and made sure that this is all possible. Lastly, we have a few donors here who are present, and of course, none of this is possible without money. So thank you for all your support for Turning Point, and thank you for your contributions that also make this possible. All starts with you. But with that, I'll introduce Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens.
It is government's role to protect our rights against tyranny. It is government's role to protect our rights against tyranny. Government does not give you rights. Government is not going to tell you how many people you get to have over for Thanksgiving or Christmas. They work for us. The United States Constitution starts with we the people. They work for us, everybody.
Now, welcoming to the stage, Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens.
Hey everybody, great to be here. Candace, welcome to Wisconsin.
Yes, wonderful. I haven't done a campus event in so long, so I'm very honored and blessed to be here.
And we had to make sure, because we've been traveling so much, we're like, we're in Wisconsin, right? So okay, we know what state that we're in. So Candace, I'm going to ask you the most difficult question that I think someone in power can possibly get in American politics, something that has befuddled the people at the top levels of government. What is a woman?
I'm not a biologist.
How did we get to a place where that is even like a question that now a Supreme Court justice can't answer?
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting to talk about this topic at length, because I remember when we first started doing this, when you and I were traveling around the country 4 or 5 years ago, and I was really pressing on the transgender movement. And I remember conservatives at the time kept saying, this is such a small, you know, this isn't going to matter much. Why are you focused on this? And I said, because this is what's going to come around the corner. It seemed so obvious to me that was going to place emphasis on children, that it was also going to sort of deconstruct. It was already a radicalized feminist movement, but I saw this moving towards the abolition of women, right? And it seemed so natural throughout these feminist waves, and I was saying from the very beginning, I am not a feminist. I remember what we went through when the Me Too movement started, and I said, I don't support the Me Too movement because this is about the takedown of men, and they really came after us. But I really did see us getting to this point very quickly where now we're talking about just abolishing what it means to be a woman, and it's interesting to consider the intersectionality of all of that, how people can say that they're feminists, but they won't use their platforms to speak out against this. And it was something to me, especially now, you know, I'm 11 weeks away from giving birth to my second child. And I spoke at length about this today in shooting a documentary of just how significant the roles of the roles of masculinity and femininity are, and both are under attack right now. It's suddenly bad to be a masculine man. They're trying to make men more feminine, but also saying to women that you shouldn't aspire to womanhood, right? You shouldn't aspire to family. There's something wrong with you if you want to be a stay-at-home mom. You should want to climb the corporate ladder, and in the end, it's actually making both sexes miserable, and who is benefiting from it? Government, right? So when you absolve the family, when you absolve what it means to be a man, which is something that gives you worth, when you absolve what it means to be a woman, which is something that ultimately gives you worth, what you are left with is an incredibly dependent society that's turning to government and worshiping at the mantle of government, right? You're talking about kids that are being injected with hormones really young. You can't come back from that. That's not something that's temporary. So it's a funny thing, but it's also an incredibly sad thing that we're now in a society where people can't answer a question as basic as what is a woman.
Yeah, and so, I mean, you bring up a point about these waves of feminism, right? So you say you're not a feminist. Let's dive deeper into that. What does that actually mean? Because you'd think that the fight for the feminists would be when a bunch of men start pretending to be women. Like, that would be, like, the line, right? Or when, I mean, I don't agree with feminist dogma, but the one thing I probably do agree with in second wave feminism is that men and women are different and they have different needs, wants, and concerns. Like, that's one of the building blocks of society. Why is it that so many of the feminists that have been screaming at you and I for the last couple years about, you know, women's rights or whatever are like, you know, it's actually okay that a man wins the NCAA championship as a woman?
Because those people are not actually feminists. And what you see increasingly with radicalized movements is that they borrow words from the past that actually meant something, right? Like racism used to mean something, right? Now it just means that you disagree with me, I don't like you, and therefore you're a white supremacist. So they're borrowing a word from the past. Oh.
They're trying to stop the event by pulling a fire alarm, so.
Wow.
Hopefully we can get that resolved.
That's a new one.
This is how you know your ideas are a threat to the left, because they have to resort to these kind of childish tactics.
Wow. Never seen that one before. We had Beyonce music once, though. I said we once had the Beyonce music, but we didn't have that.
Yeah, we've seen a lot. I've heard about this, but it goes to show the petulant narcissism. Maybe there is a fire, the chance of a fire being very low, by the way. A coordinated attack. I've heard many times that they do this across the country. But Candace, let's proceed.
Yeah. So what was I just saying?
We were talking about how the left is a group of petulant, narcissistic children that have never grown up.
So borrowing words from the past, right? So they take a word that has meaning and means something, and then they just say, we're going to say this word so that if you stand against it, then there's something wrong with you. Are they going to make us leave?
Prove there's a fire, and then we'll leave the building. They do this all the time to try to stop events they don't like, prove that people's lives are in danger, and will respectfully leave the building, right? Okay. Candace, continue.
Yeah, so it's a tactic, and it's an important one to recognize when it's happening, and it's definitely happening in terms of the modern radicalized women's movement, which actually does nothing but make women miserable. I mean, what they are trying to do is reassign women's goals in life and ultimately teach both sexes to fight against their own biology. And let me tell you something, no matter what, at the end of the day, your biology is going to win. So it saddens me to see women, and now I'm at the age, obviously, where I'm having children, and you see women that bought into the lies of what they thought and perceived to be feminism, and they become these bitter, angry, don't have a family, threw everything into, you know, their careers, marching in the streets, shrieking, because they were sold a bill of lies from culture that made them think that men were horrible people, and wanting to aspire to family made them not progressive enough. And similarly, when you see men that are told to shun their own biology, you know, there are these shriveled, emasculated people that don't have anything of real value, because the things that matter most in our society, of course, are family. Your family, it should be the start and the finish of every single day. It should be ultimately what you aspire to, and the role of women in raising up children to be good members of society is so significant. It's really the only thing standing between government and complete domination are mama bears and strong families.
And so let's kind of build that out. It seems like men are becoming women, women are becoming men at this rapid pace. What does the masculine and the feminine archetype mean? What does womanhood mean? What does manhood mean? Why are we not allowed to talk about it anymore?
I know, it seems very strange. Like, we're suddenly pretending that there aren't differences, and that we women to be feminine is to be beautiful, it's to be nurturing, to be a man is to be strong. And I'm not talking like, oh, I can bench 350. I'm talking about having a strength to lead a household, you know, and it's so emblematic of what I saw in the relationship between my grandmother and my grandfather growing up, where there were very clearly two identified, separate identified roles within that household. My grandfather led the house in a respectful manner, and women are meant to think, oh, men lead households means that you're going to be subjugated and make them a sandwich, you're going to be barefoot and pregnant, which, by the way, as a pregnant woman, I'd love to be barefoot right now. I don't know why that's getting a bad rep. It really is comfortable. It's a great way to be. I'd love to be making a sandwich right now, barefoot and pregnant. But they use these sort of images and make you think that there's something dirty about it, and it's the best part of every single day that I have is making it home to my family, providing a meal for them, having that time, sharing stories, raising your children. So what they've done is they've perverted those things, right? They've made it seem dirty and wrong. Men need their men time. Women need their women time. We are a different species. The things that when I get around with my girlfriends that I talk about, that my husband will like for 5 seconds be like, you know? And then I hear him talking to his lads as he says he's English, and I just go, men are really dumb. You guys just are, you know, like they never really grow up. They're always boys on the inside. And it's sweet and it's amazing and it's wonderful and us women need to talk about nonsense. And these are wonderful things. These are wonderful stereotypes. Stereotypes have meaning and they're real. Don't let people pervert them in your head to think that there's something wrong with those stereotypes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, so I think what's happening now, Candace, is we have one coalition of America that lives on Team Reality. You and I wear the jersey of Team Reality. And the other, the wokies, right, the people that need to, you know, pull fire alarms or whatever, wear two masks when they shower, or like whatever, right? You know, believe men can become pregnant, like all these people, right? But I believe that those of us that actually have the humility to believe that we have to live to these pesky shackles of reality, we're actually happier people because we believe in the laws of nature and nature's God, as the Declaration beautifully articulates. And we're willing to admit that through the thousands of years of recorded history, there's some things that we don't believe should change, that we need to be anchored to the beauty of antiquity. And why is that such a controversial statement? Why is it that we almost feel as if we're kind of in this non-stop conversation that we must have progress for progress' sake, regardless of the damage it does to people? I mean, and the damage is real. I mean, you look around, you have the most socially progressive country America's ever been at the moment. It's also the saddest, most depressed, most alcohol addicted, most drug addicted, most suicidal generation in history. Is there a correlation to those two things?
There is. So I actually wrote a chapter in my book of a concept that I refer to as over-civilization, because I didn't know what to call it. But what tends to happen when you end up in these times of extreme and remarkable privilege is that people create challenges where there are none. So I believe that there's something natural in the human spirit that wants to continue advancing, that wants to believe that they progressed to something, right? We're the generation that ended, you know, World War II. We're the generation that, you know, ended the Vietnam War. We're the generation that did this act of heroism, and we're so proud of ourselves. And that's natural in the human spirit. We want to achieve. We're naturally achievers. But when you arrive in a generation where really kind of you got it right, we're civilized, we put an end to slavery, put an end to racism, we put, you know, an end to women not being allowed to vote, then what does that spirit strive toward? And the answer, which we're learning every day, is stupidity, right? They start fires where there are none, right? Literally, I guess tonight, starting fires where there are none. So they go, oh, well, we must do something, so let's defeat bathroom signs. And you're like, what? Nobody had an issue. Man, female, like, you know, we get, no, this is horrible. And it's leading to people that are gender confused not being able to go to the restroom. And you're going, what are you doing? And when you start striving towards things just for the sake of striving, you actually end up backwards, right? Which is how we've ended up in this feminist argument where now women are actually being subjugated by men in these circumstances, like Leah Thomas, who is a man. William Thomas. I'm happy that you can call yourself whatever you want, but you're a male, and you have women that are being made to compete against a male, and that's how you end up. It just becomes a cycle of stupidity.
Yeah, and it's inevitable, right? So people that do not believe in a transcendent moral order or believe in family, they're going to have to find purpose somewhere, right? And what better purpose than believing and convincing yourself that you are going to dedicate your life to the destruction of the society around you, right? And for a person that is not rooted in or educated in the way of kind of the Western canon, it could be very compelling and tempting, right? So why is it so tempting, especially for the elites, to believe this stuff. Like, Candace, how do we get to a place where Apple comes out with the pregnant man emoji, right? And Netflix comes out with a new special that says he's expecting. We wonder why they're down 37%. Their stock is down. Beautiful thing to see. How do we get to a place where, you know, and maybe you can help me. Why is it smart people, right, that believe the dumbest stuff? Like, you have to go to college to believe some of this stuff. It's so stupid.
You do. When people tell me how many degrees they have, I know that they're further and further from reality, right? Because they haven't actually done anything practically in their lives but learned stuff, and they're very convinced. And there's a reason for that, by the way. And I know it's ironic saying this on a college campus, but you guys are seeing this in your classrooms, and I know that the stuff that there are classrooms now that make you say what your gender pronouns are. That's absolute foolishness. That's foolishness, right? It didn't exist when we were in school. You didn't have to do this because we understood what your pronouns were just by looking at you. And yet you're paying a very hefty sum to learn stupid stuff like that, right? To believe that there can be more, and you can be, a squid on a Monday if you want to be, and a mermaid on a Friday. Squid. Yeah, I'm a squid. It's a new one, but check out TikTok because there are squids.
Squid gender.
Yeah, there's all sorts of things. But why not, right? As soon as you start saying that what you think is true, then you can be an animal one day if you'd like to. But the reason for that is simple, and then it really brings you back to Marxist ideology. So I believe, and I would really have to examine if the college education system does not get a complete and utter makeover, I wouldn't send my child. And because what you really understand what they're doing is they're intentionally manufacturing people that are learning actually very little, but come out with a tremendous amount of confidence, right? So you can now enroll and you can get a major, you can get a degree in queer studies, right? Or I don't know what that means. Like, you can get a degree in gender studies. How did you spend $100,000 in 4 years learning something that I literally learned in kindergarten? Guys' restroom, girls' restroom, right? But imagine that individual. Imagine that individual that in their mind has done everything right. They went through the school system. They applied to school. They got into a university. They spent 4 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially getting this degree and this certificate that tells them that they are a smart person in society. And then they go out into society and they go, I'm smart, I'm applying for jobs. And it turns out that nobody needs a gender studies major to do anything for them, right? When my AC breaks, I don't call a gender studies major. I don't know anybody that calls it. Just right now, if there actually was a fire, would we be going, help, somebody get in a gender studies major? Really, somebody, please get them quick. They're really going to help society. So they get out in society and they realize they're not needed. They're not needed because why would they be needed? This is stupidity. This is a ridiculous degree to have in your hand. And what happens to that individual is that they look at the person who graduated high school, didn't go to college, but maybe went to a trade school, and that guy knows how to fix an AC. All right, well, I live in Tennessee. Let me tell you something. When the AC breaks, I will pay that guy any amount of money. $10,000, that's perfectly normal. I'll sign the check. I've got kids at home. I'm pregnant. I'm barefoot in the kitchen making a sandwich. Gotta have the AC working, right? And so that guy, imagine the college person who spent all this money and is seeing that guy is making more money than him. Well, that gender study major becomes a bitter, angry person. He needs somebody to be angry at, right? And he's not going to be himself. He's not going to search internally and recognize that he was sold a lie. So instead, he starts blaming the system. He becomes a perfect little Marxist warrior. And then when somebody says to him, it's because of the white man. It's because of the tall man. It's because of the rich man. He easily falls into that ideology, and he becomes that idiot student that's marching in the streets demanding justice, when in reality, you should be demanding a refund from the professors that have lied to you for the last 4 years.
So, speaking of insidious movements that have lied to people, I saw a lot of Black Lives Matter flags driving on the way here. BLM, otherwise known as the real estate
empire of the world.
Yeah, the real estate hedge fund empire of Patrisse Cullors. So Candace, tell us why, that for whatever reason, are they able to get away with it? They raise $90 million and go buy mansions in Canada and LA for black creator space. What's going on here?
We don't know what's going on, but I will say this, is that I exercised absolutely no humility in saying that I was right. And I just do not care. Na 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 boo boo. I spent years being called a race traitor for pointing out what was so plainly obvious, which was that you had a bunch of kids marching in the street wearing Black Lives Matter t-shirts, raising money. You guys were perfect little billboards for a company, and you didn't know who was running it. You had no idea where the money was going. You just started screaming because it was the fun thing to do, I guess, at the time, right? Like screaming and shrieking and demanding justice. And nobody looked into the finances or the corporate structure, and there were such obvious holes. And anytime a movement takes fire like that, just ahead of an election cycle, you better know that some money laundering is going on. It's the timing of these Black Lives Matter riots is impeccable. Every time before an election, suddenly people are shrieking in the streets and they have their story, a perfect victim, and this is what happened and this is why it needs to matter. And we're talking about this movement raised billions of dollars worldwide, and nobody, not a single building, not a single Black Lives Matter corporate office, at least, where I can see that they're hiring black students. Instead, they burned down black neighborhoods. Have you seen the neighborhoods that hosted the riots? They burned down police precincts. They can't get police to police the streets anymore. We have autonomous zones. Criminality has never been higher in these inner cities. You destroyed black lives because it felt good to march in the street and say Black Lives Matter. And I just kept saying to people, I do not betray my race. I betray stupidity all the time, and stupidity comes in many different colors.
And it all kind of happened, during Floydapalooza and kind of post all of that, right? And how did the smart people again get it so wrong?
Well, it turns out that the smart people are not that smart. And by the way, this is not a left or right issue, because the capitulation happened on both sides. On the left, it's like, yay, change in your Black Lives Matter t-shirt for the, the movement is every 5 weeks. You got to keep up with it. And, save us, Dr. Fauci. We love you, Dr. George Floyd, whatever it is. It's just the new thing, right, that they can be shrieking about because they're fundamentally unhappy. But on the right, what you saw was people that didn't have the courage to speak out about it because race still makes people uncomfortable, right? And that it makes people uncomfortable for what I just said, right? Because they're borrowing these words that actually have an entirely different meaning. So it became this threat, this, political bullet to your head. You either support Black Lives Matter or you're a racist. No, it doesn't work like that. There's a lot of gray area, there's a lot of nuance. I don't know much about Black Lives Matter. And you see this over and over and over again, right? You either declare yourself to be a feminist or you don't want equal rights between men and women. No, feminism has come to mean something else. You're seeing it right now. You either put up a Ukrainian flag in your yard, right? Or you're a Putin puppet, where you can no nuance. You can't discuss Zelensky. You can't discuss, his ties to Burisma. I see this over and over again, and I can't stand it. And it makes me angry that the cowardice does also exist on the right. Where the right just goes, oh, we have to just say this. It's just to make people happy. And the second that you catch yourself making statements like, I'm not a racist, but I'd like to talk about Black Lives Matter, you're already playing their game. You have a right to discuss issues deeper than the surface level. You have a right to think critically. You have a right to perhaps see that there are multiple chess pieces on the board. And I think that we need to do a better job of not being afraid of being called a name on the right, because it's happening way too often.
So the last thing, Candace, I want to talk to you about is something, you did a phenomenal documentary on Parler, and you and I both agree, and a lot of eyes have been opened to this, that one of the great threats to liberty and humanity is the stranglehold that Big Pharma has over our livelihood and the decisions that we can and cannot make. I mean, mandatory vaccines to all of this, it's from the moment you're born, you're kind of in this biomedical pharma fascist state. Expand on that, talk about your documentary, and talk about how this actually transcends political issues, because some of the greatest apologists for corporate pharmaceutical dominance are actually on the right.
Yeah, well, we have more people, big pharma lobbyists in D.C. than we have representatives in Congress. It's a huge problem. These people are bought and paid for, and big pharma is incredibly wealthy. And you are living in a time where if you thought Pablo Escobar and El Chapo were big, you need to look around your own country, because you have the biggest drug cartel that has ever operated on the face of the planet happening right here in America. everything that El Chapo and Pablo Escobar aspired to, linking arms with government officials, running elections, Big Pharma is doing right here in America, and it's been going on for a very long time. It's right. I have put out a free podcast series for moms, and it's something that all women and men should be educated on, understanding the history of vaccines. And I think now people are suddenly more ready to have that conversation because they saw the corruption up front with COVID. They saw the way that people were forced and what OSHA tried to do, what the CDC has been trying to do to force people to put a substance in their body, even if it flies in the face of scientific data. You know, you can be at zero risk, and they're already running tests on infants. You know, my story was obviously I was just like you guys. To go to school, you had to get certain vaccines, but to make it clear, when we had to get vaccines from a time that we were 0 until 18, I think I had to get maybe 12. Today, kids have to get 70 plus, about 75 vaccines. So, and let me tell you, the kids are not healthier today than they were when I was growing up. They're sicker than they've ever been. Everyone's got an allergy, an autoimmune disorder. I can't have gluten. I'm allergic to peanuts. That's another phenomenon. Like when I was growing up, there was like one kid in class, and now it's everybody's got all of these allergies. Fortunately, and I do say this fortunately because God works in mysterious ways, I was injured by the Gardasil vaccine. When I was 20 and I had to get that vaccine. I came back from college and I got the vaccine, and I had a seizure in the office. I'd never had a seizure in my life. And when I kind of woke up from that episode and the doctor said, well, you shouldn't complete this, and I began researching just that vaccine. I was very horrified at what I found, which was just, first and foremost, cervical cancer rates, which back then they said it was just for women. It was going to help you not, HPV could lead to cervical cancer, and this was a prophylactic for that. They've now expanded it, and now somehow men have to get it too. I don't even know how we got there. But it made me realize how corrupt and how the data was, you know, how it was completely lied to, how they used a fear campaign regarding cancer to force me into making a decision that I didn't really fully understand. When I became a mom, I made it my job, and this is why I talk about feminism needing the idea of modern feminism needing to die, because it should be our job. Women should be the CIA, the FBI, and the DHS when it comes to our children. The buck should stop with mom. I just began researching vaccines in general and was horrified at what I found and just wanted to share it and show people the FDA inserts, the warnings on there, everything that you're seeing kids have. It's right on the FDA website. Will tell you that these are potential reactions that can happen if you get these vaccines. I am not ever telling people what to do with their lives or what not to do with their lives, but I believe that you cannot make a sound decision unless you are actually given the real information, and that's what it's all about, allowing people to make informed decisions. So yeah, it's been a passion of mine to talk about these vaccines, and the time is definitively opportune in the midst of the COVID crazies.
Yeah, and I think that's an unintended benefit, I should say, and you said it perfectly. It's like the seed of the equivalent benefit, right? So I mean, you see these videos of them announcing the repealing of the mask mandate. I mean, it's like a 90-10 issue, right? I mean, people are finally happy. Now, the fact that you have to be happy to get your basic rights to breathe freely back, that's very perverted, honestly, right?
I wouldn't celebrate it because of that. We have to stop cheering when we get our basic human
so it's like you get
back.
back to where you were. It's like, okay, not so fast, right? So it's like you get your natural rights back. But I think it has opened people's eyes to at least challenge these power structures, right?
And it's the same thing, by the way, going back to the either-or scenario. So if I say that I think the Gardasil vaccine is bad, people would say you're anti-vax. Again, it's that it's so bifurcated. It's not that binary. You can say, I have questions about vaccines without being anti-vax. People who have been vaxxed their entire lives and didn't want to get the COVID vaccine were suddenly called anti-vax, right? You can say, I don't agree with COVID policy, and they're calling you a grandpa killer. You want grandpa to be dead if you don't agree with lockdowns. So you constantly have a society that's afraid to think outside of the box, or else they're going to be branded with the scarlet letter. And I'm happy to wear all the scarlet letters when it comes to making decisions for myself and for my right to be free.
And I want to say this before we get to some questions. You know how rare it is for someone with Candace's platform to actually talk about these issues one after the other? You see, the corporate media, they want people like Candace just to say the same thing over and over again, right? Dr. Fauci, may his, sainthood forever be a blessing, or whatever you're supposed to say, right? George Floyd, thank you, for what you've done for us, or whatever, right? Zelensky is the new church, or whatever ridiculous thing that they're trying to say, right? Which is what they're saying, right? Instead, Candace is like, you know what? No, I have this platform, and I'm going to say things that are true, and I don't care what you say back to me. And you don't see that at all, actually. In fact, that sort of courage is very, very rare in America, and it deserves to be applauded, truly. It's really special. So, all right, let's get to some questions here, and we're going to form a line. So we're going to start to kind of do single file there. Raise your hand, please. Thank you. You guys can just start doing a line right there for those of you that want to ask questions. So don't raise your question. No, you go into the line. That's okay. Go into the line if you have a question. So this is a majority conservative center-right audience, right? So here's some ground rules. If someone asks a question that you find to be reprehensible or disagree with, don't shout them down. Don't interrupt them. Let them get the question out. It takes some courage to come to a place that's mostly conservative and ask a question. We are going to show the left courtesy and respect, even though they don't show us that same courtesy and respect when we speak. Okay, so we're gonna live out that here at this event. And if you disagree, you guys can come to the front of the line. But let's start right here.
This question is kind of for both of you, but like individually. What has been the most rewarding outcome after any of your speeches? Have you seen any change?
Good question. Want to answer first?
Yeah, I mean, the most rewarding things I hear from our podcast, our radio show, and our speaking is two things. People that say, you totally changed my mind on a topic or an issue or perspective. The most rewarding thing is where people say they gave their life to Christ because of what we're doing. That's the most important thing, right? But going downstream from that, just the conversion is just, I'm such a big believer in conversions. Those of us in the West, you should never lose that optimism that people can be converted. And especially as we reflect in some of the great stories of the Bible of people that believed one thing and then they believed something totally different. We should never lose that sort of optimism that people can change their mind. But the second thing that I love that I hear at events are people that were afraid to speak out. They agreed, and now they're speaking out because of what they hear. That's almost equally rewarding. And it's close, it's not as morally important, but you can make an argument it's in the same ballpark. Because if good people agree with you and they don't repeat what they hear that they know is true, then the event just dies after we're done, right? But if some of you are now inspired because of what you hear to go talk for the rest of your life in your family or your community or your workplace, and then all of a sudden we'll turn this massive event into a movement that could change Milwaukee for the better and Wisconsin for the better. And so when I hear that, that really gives me a great deal of satisfaction.
I totally agree with that. I think that's a great answer. I second that. Check.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hello, Charlie. Hello, Cadence. I'm an Eagle Scout, and in between joining the Boy Scouts and within the past 5 years, I've seen the program change a lot. How do you think it shaped me as a man, and I know several other people in the audience too. How do you think the programs like the BSA, Girl Scouts, and other youth programs will shape the future of America?
So I'm an Eagle Scout, so I could talk from some authority on this. The Boy Scouts of America started as a wonderful institution that helped develop generals that fought in World War II, presidents, statesmen, entrepreneurs, and business people. My life was very impacted favorably from the Boy Scouts. I went up to Camp Napawan, actually, in Wild Rose, Wisconsin. Growing up, they actually just closed it. The Boy Scouts of America is a moral disgrace now. And the Boy Scouts of America should be, I hope they go bankrupt. I hope they fold. From every single front. You might say, why? They let girls into the Boy Scouts, which is complete, first of all, just on its face is like the dumbest thing you could possibly imagine, right? But it's also morally wrong. And here's why. And Candace touched on this earlier. Boys being around boys and men being around men is important for development of individuals, especially for teenagers. And every clinical study will show this, you have boys amongst one another trying to get stronger or complete an obstacle course. The minute you put one girl within the zip code of that, all their behavior changes. It changes it's true. Instead of trying to create teams or lift one another, they're all now trying to impress the girl. And then they react to the embarrassment of the failure of how the girl reacts to them doing the obstacle course or whatever. The Boy Scouts has lost all validity, not to mention they're covering up the sex abuse stuff, which is just awful. That's bad, but unfortunately that's very widespread in our institutions in our country. So that needs to be called about. So what's the future of the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts? There's now competitors against Boy Scouts. I can't remember the name of it. Trail Life, I think is what it's called, and they're growing. I don't know if you're a Boy Scout or an Eagle Scout or not. I didn't catch that.
I am
Yeah.
I am an Eagle Scout.
You're an Eagle Scout. Great. So look, you got through it. I tell parents, take your kids out of the Boy Scouts immediately and totally. I hope they go bankrupt and they're run by corporate hacks that don't know basic biology or actually how to raise good men anymore. And that's a bad thing for America.
Charlie and Candace, thank you for coming. My name is KJ Eichstead. I'm 28, so I feel like I can relate to a lot of what you do. My question I wanted to ask you is someone who builds brands for a living and helps other people build their brands. I wanted to ask you about Elon Musk, who has the most powerful brand in the world, and also what advice would you give to people for building a brand in the face of controversy and adversity?
Okay, I'm going to start with the Elon Musk question. I think what he is doing is fantastic, and there's no way to lose. And what I mean by that is that obviously the Twitter execs are going to block this, obviously. But it doesn't matter because it's leading to a global awakening about just how corrupt the system is. And so I think this has been one of those moments of sunshine, which has provided like a disinfectant, and people are really seeing just how corrupt it is. I mean, there's no reason not to accept that deal. I mean, Twitter as a company has been floundering. I mean, they have not earned any money for their shareholders. They won't even bring it to them because it has become such an ideological battleground, right? We know that if he ever got into that company, into the weeds of it, we would see that, I mean, Saudi Arabia, like suddenly the left is supporting, I know, like, so we were saying, like, just speaking out and saying, I'm against this. And I've said this for years. I mean, Twitter has been operating bot accounts. They've been creating faux trends, things that are not possibly trending. They make trend. I think they have an allegiance with certain publications as well. The Daily Beast somehow has a way to make their stories trend. And there's a lot of political corruption. I think they put a ton of fake followers around people that they want. Like, I believe AOC, they created overnight. I really do believe that. And so they will not release Twitter because it would honestly provide a window into just how corrupt the system is. But what Elon Musk is doing is absolutely brilliant. And yeah, it's not going to go through, obviously. And I think eventually he'll just pull out all of his money, and that'll be that. And he made tons of money, and it's great. And America will be better for seeing it all up. Like, America will have been better just for having an opportunity to see just how dysfunctional it is and just how corrupt and how we really don't live in the economy and in the world that we believe that we do.
I'll answer the brand. Any thoughts on the brand issue?
Oh, no, you can go. You can answer that.
So just on the Twitter thing, super quick, this is where I disagree with some people on the right that are market fundamentalists. I love markets. Candace loves markets. But the Twitter example shows that the profit motive is actually not the highest on the hierarchy. It isn't. And we've always believed that the profit motive drives all human behavior, and that's wrong. If that was true, they would accept the Elon Musk deal and the deal would be done. There are things that matter more than the profit motive, and that's the prestige and the power motive, which actually matters a lot more than the profit motive when you talk about human psychology. So the Twitter board of directors, they're not running a company. They're running something closer to like a Democrat super PAC regime propaganda censorship machine that...
Yes, well said.
Thank you. That exists to stifle the voices they don't like and elevate the ones they like.
Right.
And so it just goes into show how hard they're fighting. Like, yeah, a Saudi prince comes out. Really? How's freedom of speech in Riyadh in the spring? I'd love to hear about that. How's press freedom in Medina? Like, can you say something against Muhammad during Ramadan in Saudi? Of course not. Like, it's the greatest hypocrisy ever that a Saudi prince tries to come and be like, yes, I'm going to stand for free speech. Like, how about you sit this one out? Like, the one issue the Saudis should sit out is like how they treat journalists. Like, not exactly a lot of credibility in the last couple decades on that issue. Like, maybe oil exploration, you guys can, chime in next time. So, but it shows a window into how important censorship is to these people, that they need the ability to shut us up. I'm suspended from Twitter right now. First, I didn't do anything wrong. And I love how people applaud, right? And I called Rachel Levine, I said Richard Levine, Rachel, I can't remember. Now Rachel used to be Richard. It's called dead naming. You can't do that. I refuse to delete the tweet. I refuse to engage in a Soviet show trial where like you have to acknowledge doing something wrong even though you didn't. Candace is exactly right, though. I don't think the deal's going to go through. I don't want to be cynical, but I think they have unintentionally red-pilled the world's richest man, which might about be the dumbest thing you could possibly do, where now like center-right non-woke causes are going to have a $300 billion man and the owner of SpaceX, Tesla, the Boring Company, Neuralink, and someone who's like the greatest engineering mind in 100 years being dedicated to abolish the woke left. Like, good job, Twitter. Your move next. Like... Thank you. Sorry, the brand thing, I don't want to spend too much time on it. Lean into the controversy. That's my advice. I know that's short. Controversy can be the greatest signal boost to any brand if you play it right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Charlie and Candace. My name is Brian. In light of the holiday, I wanted to ask, would America be a freer country if weed was legalized?
Oh, I was like, what holiday is it? Sorry, guys. I'm sorry, would America be a
freer country if weed was legalized?
Nope, it would not be, and it would not at all be. And here's what I'm going to say, and I just spoke about this. For such a long time, people kept saying the slippery slope wasn't real, right? Like, oh, if we legalize pot, we'll just be a freer country, I don't know, a more relaxed country, whatever they thought it was going to be. But it's not like we're just gonna slide into suddenly legalizing methamphetamine. Oh, well, we did that pretty quickly after legalizing marijuana in certain states, right? So now we have the argument that we're fighting is like, forget marijuana. We now have places in New York City where you can go shoot up, and the government will give you a needle and a syringe to be able to do that. You now have, I think, Oregon's leading the charge on that. They've decriminalized every drug. Yeah, they have injection sites and they decriminalized every single drug. So I am a person that does not believe that it would render people freer. I don't believe that at all. If we're discussing the tenets of whether or not you believe marijuana is more harmful than of a substance in alcohol, I would probably say no, and alcohol has been detrimental to people and has killed more people and things of that nature. But when we're talking about whether or not either is good for society as a whole, absolutely not. I actually stand really on the opposite side of that issue because of what we are seeing today with all the things that the left is trying to do with every single drug, And it started with marijuana. It's just going to be, we're just going to decriminalize marijuana. We're just going to legalize marijuana, and that's going to be it. It's never going to be it.
Yeah, and I think you asked a really important question. You used a specific word. You said, would it be freer? It depends what your definition of freer is. Do you have a proper definition of freedom, or do you have kind of this classical liberal social degeneracy view of freedom, right? So is freedom meaning you could have public nudity and defecate on the streets? I think that makes everyone less free and less happy.
Right.
So freedom is the pursuit of virtue, right? Freedom is getting in alignment with natural law and going towards a desirable outcome so you can live in harmony with God's commands. Freedom is not being able to just go to an injection site and having pleasure at will. In fact, I think that makes people less free. And everyone believes
this. It makes them a slave to their pleasures.
Totally. I mean, if you meet an alcoholic, they're the least free people in the world.
Yeah.
An alcoholic is the least free person in the world.
I am the most free in my sobriety. I really am.
Same.
And I
can't remember the last time I had a drink. And I mean, people say, are you going to ban alcohol? I'm like, no, but I think America would be better. Like, there's no doubt. If we had less people drinking alcohol, America would be a better place 100%. To live. Like, no doubt. No one wants to say it out loud, especially in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. No one wants to say that.
And it's funny because I was even talking about you really do become a slave to your pleasure. And it's funny because I was just talking about today with my assistant who's backstage. I said, how much money would you have in your bank account if you never drank alcohol? When I think about that, I want to cry. I want to cry because when I was in college, it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday bar, Tuesday a bar, just any day bar. I was, pledging a sorority. And so I don't say that from a place of arrogance or piety. I'm not I'm so good because I don't drink now. But it's interesting to think that if I had practiced that temperance and I had said, actually, I'm not going to drink, it scares me. I look at the size of the houses when I'm like, I could have owned that house. I would have been a millionaire by the time I was 25. So I'm just not, I'm not one of those people that stands on stage and is like, drink and smoke more. I get being young. I get, the experimentation that comes with being young, and I don't judge it at all because trust me, this girl took the most liberal route to conservatism that you will ever find. But no, it doesn't. I don't think it renders you freer. Freedom is about temperance. Freedom is about control, and you realize that as you get older.
So I'll just close with this. We'll go to the next question. Candace is exactly right. Good lesson for life. You can live it the hard way, learn it the hard way, or learn it the easy way, and just listen to us. Pleasure comes with a price. And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you realize anything that quickly rushes serotonin and dopamine from an external influence, whether it be pornography, marijuana, methamphetamines, psychedelics, or alcohol, comes with a price. Now, you might be willing to pay that price, but be careful, because we know from neurology is our bodies are so amazing, and you start to build tolerance to that price, and then all of a sudden the downside is a lot worse than the upside. And we're living in a country with 100,000 plus drug overdoses every single year, and we also live in the most medicated, thanks to Pharma, the most drug addicted, thanks to the other issues, and the most sad, depressed, and suicidal generation in history. Thanks for being here tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if you guys, anyone disagrees, you guys can chime in. The Turning Point people can help navigate you through that. Yes, okay.
Thank you. Oh, thanks. Hi, Candace. Hi, Charlie. My name is Greta. I am a small business owner in Marquette, Michigan. I drove 5 hours to be here.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
The small issue is that I run my business in a primarily liberal city, and I am wondering your advice on how I exist as a small business owner in a liberal area and still discuss, I guess, so I have a platform on Instagram. Can I open up that Instagram to, discuss ideas? And I guess my question is, how do I exist as a small business owner with conservative ideals in a liberal space?
What is your business, out of curiosity?
I run a pop-up shop. It's only open 3 days a month, and we sell women's clothing and home decor.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think you just do what you're doing. If your product is good, it's great. The only thing I would recommend that you do is pick up and move your business to a conservative leaning, because and I'm not saying that because I'm like rah conservatives. It's because you will start to realize that when you're in liberal districts, they create government policies that are meant to punish and penalize people for being successful. You're seeing California being the state that has been exemplary to exactly that. If you're a good person that follows the law, you start a business, they are going to tax you into oblivion and transfer those tax dollars to support the criminals on the street that are defecating and need to shoot up. And it's, like I said, there couldn't be a more clear example than looking at what has really happened in cities like New York City and California and Chicago. So I always say that if you're an entrepreneur, put yourself into a position where you're surrounded by politicians that support entrepreneurship, or they will actually award people that are doing good things in their community as opposed to penalizing them. Because eventually, and if you're in a super liberal area, their guns turn towards you because they hate success, right? There's something wrong with you getting ahead. Look at you. You're young, you're beautiful, you're white, God forbid, right? And so I, especially seeing that in the example of California, how they just suddenly demonized the entrepreneur and made it seem as if, well, you make this much money, you should pay more in taxes. It's the reason why I picked up and I moved to Tennessee and I run my businesses from the South.
I agree. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello, Candace and Charlie. Huge fans here. My name is Symone. I'm 28 years old. I actually graduated from UWM about 5 years ago, and I was a hardcore liberal. Obviously, I'm here today completely switched over, have much more conservative values because I'm a Christian, faith comes first. And then just getting into the real world, you just are open to a lot of things. My question for you is just more so some advice when your family and friends have totally different viewpoints than you, or not even really opening to hearing your viewpoints. Like, how do you deal with that?
Make new friends, because that's optional. Seriously, it's not, life is too short, and I'm not saying that your job shouldn't be, people are sometimes just not ready to hear information. And I've realized that even with family members, that's a little more permanent, right? You're having family members that disagree with you. You wouldn't even, if I even told you the stories of what I went through coming out as a conservative on a public stage, when my family was so tied and boggled down. The majority of my family was liberal at that time. Things have changed. They just weren't ready to hear the message, but then eventually the message comes to them in the form of their surroundings, right? Suddenly they're looking around and, legal immigrants are being dropped off at their front desk. They're, trying to enroll into their kids, like my sisters, into classes, and they're dealing with all of the woke crap. They're dealing with having their small children that are being told they have to vaccinate, and even though they're pro-vax, they're not comfortable with this one thing. So wokeness is such a disease, and it spreads so rapidly that eventually, if you just hold on to truth, your friendships and those relationships will come back. Every single one of those people who were like, I cannot believe who you are. And I'm saying this not just my friends and family, but the world. I mean, like I just said, the Black Lives Matter narrative. I was enemy number one for telling the truth about George Floyd and talking about Black Lives Matter. Well, it's either crickets now, they have nothing to say, or they've come and they've said that they're sorry. And that's the beauty about being on the side of the truth. Like, the lie makes its way around the world before the truth gets its shoes on, as my granddad used to say. Eventually the truth does wake up, turn the alarm off, and get its shoes on.
And I would just say, when those friends come back, accept them. The prodigal son applies to us all. If people
But
are
also don't be like, no humility, I was right. Just kidding. Just kidding.
that's the Candace version of the prodigal son parable. I told you, boy, not to go. Okay. Thank you for being here tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Little Candace spin.
Hi, you guys. My name's Nia. I have a question. You mentioned I think two questions previously. She asked about, or you recommended moving her conservative business to a conservative area. Would you recommend that for more liberal businesses to be doing that as well? And would you also recommend that for not necessarily businesses, but just people in general to be moving out of the communities they disagree with and into their surrounding by people who they agree with, and vice versa?
Oh, I don't think the business itself is conservative or liberal when I say that. So I don't think that you could have if you make clothes and they're good, you make clothes and they're good. But the free market will determine that, right? So what I mean is that if you are an entrepreneur, you have to start thinking about the policies that are in place where you live. And yes, I'm a big believer that you have to think about the values of where you live as well. So and for every regard, whether it's business, whether it's family. I mean, this has become such a huge discussion when you have kids, right? Well, what kind of public school system, where are you living, what kind of public school system are you going to send them to? A school that believes that their child can pick their gender and their pronouns, or are you going to send them to a Christian school? It becomes common sense that you want to live in an area that reflects your values and that rewards the behavior that you see as acceptable. So I think that that's sort of a natural thing that people should strive toward, and I am being serious when I say that you now have areas that are I can't imagine opening a business in Los Angeles. I don't understand people that still live there. You are just being penalized. You're being successful when you look at the tax rates. And it's interesting that the young lady that came before you just said, I was a liberal until I got into the real world. That's exactly what I'm talking about, because when you get into the real world, you start to realize the way that you're taxed in certain areas. It's punitive to successful people. So yes, I would recommend it, whether it was what your leanings are doesn't matter, right? If you want to work for the sake of all of your tax dollars going to support, criminals on the street, whatever reforms they say that they're doing, then yeah, you could stay where you want to, but you're not going to earn any money, and eventually you're going to wake up and you're going to say, actually, I'm a little more fiscally conservative, as people like to say, and people tend to just migrate towards places that are advantageous to those perspectives.
And I'll answer the second part of your question. I'm torn on it. I grew up in Illinois. It's my home. But I left. But Illinois really left me, if I'm honest. And I do believe that people should start to live around people that share your values. I don't think it's healthy when you have to be ruled under Lori Lightfoot or J.B. Pritzker when there's other options in the same country. I don't. And look, Wisconsin is completely different. I think Wisconsin is a much more conservative state than it's currently being reflected politically, and it showed that in a lot of different ways. So Wisconsin's different. I love Wisconsin. It's one of my favorite places in the world. I mean that. And great people. But look, I left. I went to Arizona. Candace went to Tennessee. I want to start a family. I got married. I want to live around people that can tell me what a woman is. I want to live around people that believe that their life begins at some form of point and doesn't believe in post-birth abortion. I don't want to be worried that my guns are going to be confiscated, or that the kids in our community are going to be taught about lesbian sex when they're 4 years old. That's not a state I want to live in. And for me, that was a breaking point, not to mention the financial pressure of living in Illinois. So.
And by the way, that idea of putting yourself in a social environment that matches your own, that's a part of humanity. That's not even humanity. That's animal instinct. Find your tribe is what we're saying, right? And people do that whether you're first day of kindergarten, you're making your friends, you're finding people that you have things in common with. Then when it becomes, you become an adult and you're out in the world, it's the exact same thing. It's totally natural.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I can't answer the question on your shirt. I'm not a biologist. Next. His shirt says, what is a woman?
On it,
Thanks to Matt Walsh. But anyways, thank you guys for coming out. It's got to be very annoying to talk about the same things that you do all the time, so thank you guys so much for coming here.
It's not annoying at all. It's always a privilege.
Awesome. My question is, I know, Candace, you touched on it just a little bit, but what would you do? What's the alternative to Big Pharma? That's not something I am an expert on. I don't really follow that very often. That's something I'm just now learning about just this past year. So what's the alternative to Big Pharma?
The alternative?
Yeah, like
a free market solution. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, when we're talking about big pharma, you have the same manufacturers of every vaccine. They put in all of these restrictions, so nobody, even with in terms of medicine, I mean, what Trump passed in terms of the right to try, they won't allow anybody to even create medicines, to create alternatives. They make everybody who says like, hey, this is in your cabinet, you can use this to treat this. You're a quack doctor. Another alternative is just learning about the things that our grandparents knew, you know, that you could, that not everything requires a pill, honestly. And a lot of the reason why they put out these pills is to make you a lifelong customer of big pharma. I am so against, like, I mean, and when I say against medicine, I mean like, unless I actually need to take a pill, like really need to take a pill, I'm willing to just be sick for a few days and let my body naturally fight it. And we've become a society that doesn't do that anymore. And it's literally what created the opioid epidemic that we're facing right now in this country, is that there's a pill for everything in America. And it is unique to America, by the way. In Europe, it is not like this. The amount of kids that I see that are on anxiety pills, depression pills, ADHD pills. I mean, these are, benzos. All of these pills that are supposed to make them feel happy, are supposed to make them feel sad, are supposed to help them focus. It's not natural. And they know it's not natural. And in the long run, of course, it's detrimental to your health. I mean, even talking about birth control pills. This is a conversation for another day that I cannot wait to have with women. Talk about being told from the second we're enrolled in school, fight your fertility, and the long-term effects of that, which have never been explored, and which I think we're seeing today when we have so many women needing to turn to IVF to have one child, and just the lack of education, because we have, of course, rightfully so, we just trust doctors. I just trusted the doctor that gave me the Gardasil shot, right? I just trusted the doctor, because why wouldn't I? He's a doctor. And that system was built for exactly that reason, to make you believe that the doctor is smarter than you, the professor is smarter than you, trust everybody but your own gut instincts. So I think one solution is for us to realize that we have to be our own biggest advocates, that we have to be able to do the research, and that we have to think about these things critically. Because somebody tells you that this pill is fine and you can take it every day does not mean this pill is fine, you can take it every day. I'm a big believer in just using more natural things. I mean, I take all sorts of things that are in my cabinet before I'll turn to like big pharma. I mean, like my granddad used to do like the aloe vera plant. He was a real old school, and we had a cut or a burn. They use it all, by the way, in big pharma, but they package it and put a bunch of other chemicals in it and hand it to you, and it works. I mean, there's so many solutions. We need to have a bigger conversation about what's in our food. That's also big pharma, by the way. Talking about the chemicals that are also in our food. Yeah, and so it's a much bigger discussion, and I believe that it starts in the household, and not being scared to have a discussion. Like, get the scarlet letter, let them call you anti-this, quack doctor, all of this stuff. Just know that big pharma does not have your best interests at heart. They know that these pills are harmful. They quietly pull things off the market all the time that create addiction, you know, and it's sad that we see the drug dealers, of course, go to prison, but big pharma execs never go to prison for the addictions that they create. And that people are turning to the streets because big pharma execs got them addicted to these pills.
And I'd add to that, you're personally curious, check out one word, homeopathic, which is homeopathic's kind of the code word for alternative medicine. I'm an unapologetic biohacker. I go into ice cold tubs for 10 minutes straight. I do intravenous therapy. I check my vitamin D levels. This is stuff that all of you guys should know about. These are the building blocks before you even get into, you know, Prozac, antidepressants, benzodiazepines.
True health. It's true health.
It's true health, right? It's exercise, it's intake. Our entire food pyramid should be obliterated. It's a scam. It's a lie. It's all wrong. It's upside down. Men need to eat red meat at least 5 to 6 times a week, and the fact we've gotten away from that is a scam. It's one of the reasons why testosterone levels are going down so much. You need omega-3s, fatty fish. It's really important for mental health. I could go on and on and on, and Candace articulated it beautifully, but there's like at least 500 to 600 natural homeopathic non-pharmaceutical interventions that you could do right now to improve your physical health, your mental health, your bone structure, your muscle mass, your testosterone, your serotonin levels, your ability to be able to regulate neurotransmitters, all these things. And you're like, wow, I never knew that. Yeah, they don't want you to know that, actually. They don't want you to be empowered. They don't want you to all of a sudden be like, wow, you're trying to tell me that diet means a lot? You're trying to tell me that green tea actually is a lot better for me than some of this other. Yes, there's a ton of medicine, there's a ton of science behind that. So anyway, I'd check out homeopathic medicine and get into the biohacking stuff. I think you'd love it. So thank you.
Hi. So my name's Luke. I want to thank you both for coming out and just doing these kinds of things. I think it's very important to kind of just engage with the media and just kind of see what people think. So I guess my question relates somewhat to transgender people and how you feel like people who are transgender, who transition at a certain point in their life, who become very patriotic and become very passionate about this country and still want to care for it and make their part and just kind of contribute. How would you go about, taking care of and just interacting with those people as they try to, fight the constant media and just the way that things are so pandered all the time? I'm just curious as to how you would argue that.
Well, it would depend on that individual because I have a person that I work with who is a gay man who doesn't believe in gay marriage. So and that seems like very strange. You would never think of that, right? But I know transgendered individuals who believe and speak out on the fact that they believe that transgenderism, gender dysphoria, is a mental disorder. And so they approach that platform from a conservative perspective and speak out against the idea of trying to convince children to think that they can just pick their genders, and they talk about their suffering. I've hosted these people on my platforms before, and they are great contributors to conservatism because they will at length explain what led to their gender dysphoria, for example. I had a man by the name of Walt Heyer who was transgendered for 20 years, went through with the bottom surgery, and lived as a woman for 20 years before he woke up and realized that he was lied to from the time that he was a kid. And he talked about how high a percentage it is of people that are transgendered who are raped when they're children, right? And rather than addressing that trauma that makes them want to get rid of their entire existence, of who they are, want to transition into something completely different, you have a society that's handing them hormone pills. And obviously he had sex change regret. So he is one of the loudest voices for conservatism because he's approaching it from an angle of, here is where I am. Now, if you're talking about the differences between, like, can you be a transgender conservative? Can you be transgender and say that on the social issues I'm not conservative, but I'm fiscally conservative? Like, I'd have to get into the weeds of what you're referring to, like, but I believe in, free markets and capitalism, and, that becomes the job of the RNC. And I think that what's happened a lot, and there's a deeper conversation that should be had, and I wish we had more time to discuss this, is that we are conflating what it means to be a Republican with what it means to be a Christian. And so I'd need to understand what you're, and we shouldn't do that. We should not do that, right? The job of the Republican Party is to bring as many voters into, into the camp and see what we have in common and what are the things that we agree on and what we're fighting the left on. The job of Christians is to take a stand against things that are against the Bible and against Christianity. And we've been conflating that a lot lately, and there's a deeper conversation. So I've kind of over-answered your question a little bit, but I'd have to know more about how that transgender individual was entering in the conservative conversation theologically, fiscally. What more can you provide there?
I guess, more fiscally, I guess. It would be a better way to kind of go about it, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of gets into the Dave Rubin debate. Like, can you be a conservative gay person because you are fiscally conservative? Of course you can. Of course you can. So when you get to the voting booth, you might be thinking that my number one priority is I believe in free markets and capitalism, so I'm voting for the conservative guy because I don't want to see a communist takeover of the country. That makes perfect sense.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Hi there, Charlie, Candace, and Miss Owens. Congratulations on your second child, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm a film student here at UWM. I'm actually graduating this semester. However, I should have had some hindsight on the industry I was getting into. There's a lot that I'm actually worried about publishing or making or creating, frankly, with a lot of the topics or points that I want to talk about, because I fear the reaction or I fear the response that I would be getting. And God knows you two have gotten some very severe responses, very negative responses from what I like to call this new internet death threat culture. My question is a two-part. How have you two personally dealt with those threats? And where do you think this sort of culture of extreme retaliation, especially via the internet, has come from?
Keyboard warriors just do not at all bother me. They're not even like I don't even read the comments. Like I literally do not care at all. I think it's so stupid. Like I just picture like a little teeny weeny 12-year-old in their basement. Like I'm gonna write mean comments on Zynga. Like I don't know. It's like it's just for me personally. It doesn't. I don't even bat an eyelash to mean comments on the internet. It's like everybody's a troll. Everybody's got something to say. I get it. You've all earned your blood and crip thug marks on Instagram. Got it. Cool. I find that it's tremendous cowardice. It's not real, and 0% of them would ever say any of those things to my face, which is why I've never been accosted, save that one time from Antifa, because only when they're in a group do they feel that they have the courage to say something. Yeah. But individually, these people would never walk up to me and say something like that to me. I hope I don't give them the vibe that they would think that I would take that sitting down, pregnant or not, because I wouldn't, I'm just not one of those individuals. I don't play those little games, and it's like if you have something to say and you disagree with me and you want to use a modicum of intelligence to do that, I'm happy to have a conversation with you. But internet thugging is just like, it's just lame. It's just lame.
Yeah, the internet has a perverse incentive structure, right? So introverts end up spending more time on comments, and extroverts actually live a life of meaning. And not to say there's anything wrong with introverts or extroverts, it's just true. Like introverts are gravitating towards message boards and comments, and extroverts are kind of like repulsed by that whole idea. So it's actually interesting, the people that wouldn't be willing to say something to your face are the people that are probably actually dishing out the most amount of attacks towards you. So you got to remember that, right? Yeah. Is that it's the exact opposite of what you would think, because of anonymity and bots and trolls and all that stuff.
And
Thanks.
Repulsed is the right word. I'm always like, ew, like, what are you doing? This is like weird. Like, writing mean stuff on the internet.
It's antisocial behavior. It truly is. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sir.
Hey, how you doing? Charlie, Kenneth. Just want to let you know that I appreciate you a lot before I ask my question.
Thank you.
Your video popped up about like 3-4 years ago randomly on YouTube, and it changed my life. Symone over there is actually my girlfriend. She was a liberal, and she told y'all. And I let her know that I don't date liberals, so she had no choice but to change. I don't want to get married to no liberals. But with that being said, though, I come from a single-parent household on government assistance. I live in one of the most poverty, crime-stricken areas. According to the FBI, my zip code was the worst in the nation. With that being said, I refuse to be a victim. Because I'm a victor. And there's a couple of questions that I really want to ask, but I can't because I'm actually a police officer for the city. And I want to get fired just yet. But I'm tired of spineless leaders, spineless politicians, and there's a lot of things that I really want to get out right now. But to my question. What advice would you give to a young black conservative who wants to create their own platform or to possibly join an already established organization or platform such as Turning Point USA, like Brendan Tatum? That's one of my guys too. A police officer, also 5.5 years, and I ain't gonna lie, I'm ready to expose these punks.
Well, the first thing that I would say is to figure out how you want to get involved, because right now you're mincing your words because you have to, which is why Brennan had to leave the police force because he was tired of mincing his words. And he felt like he could support the police force better if he could say everything he wanted to, and I think that he's found that that's true. So if you want to get involved on like a smaller level with community events and stuff, I run Blexit.com. Charlie runs TPUSA. We both have tabs that say get involved where you can link up. It'd be great to have you as an ambassador because you're obviously hilarious, and to just get you involved in talking about what you see, just hearing that background of your story, that's already inspiring. Like I'm already like, there it is, like coming from absolutely nothing and standing up there and being on the side of the police and on the side of law and order. That's a story people need to hear. And if you want to get involved on a louder level, speak out and speak out unapologetically. Don't care what they say, what they have to say. You already have the credentials. All of the victimhood stuff that they think gives you street cred, you got it, right? So say exactly what you want and inspire others to recognize that there's no virtue in remaining a victim. There's no virtue in staying on the streets. There's no virtue in becoming a gang member. We need more people like you speaking out, full stop. So you'll always find a home getting involved in our organizations.
Yeah, I agree to everything you said. I think what will also help is little bit younger black conservatives and stuff, people can reach out to those who still stuck in this mindset, like I used to be. As we already know, 90% of black people vote Democrat for no reason at all. I was once that person. So yeah, if you have a position, hit me up.
I love that. I love that.
Our team will
Get his
in touch, and I'll just say
that's
one
awesome.
final thing.
Thank you.
You said a video changed your life, and you could end up making videos that could change other people's lives. So think about that. God bless you. Thank you.
Hey, Candace and Charlie. I drove up here from a city I know you've heard of, fiery but mostly peaceful Kenosha. And I know that there's a couple people in the crowd that are from Kenosha too, so there's a lot of stuff that happened over the course of these few years that obviously touched people in Wisconsin pretty closely because of that. So I just wanted to know what you guys, what kind of advice you have or things to say about, first of all, to the people of Kenosha and people who live in places like Kenosha that didn't expect that the violence that happens in bigger cities like Milwaukee or Chicago would come to their doorstep.
Yeah, I'll start with this. First of all, you can't forget what happened. If you look at the history of it, and Kyle Rittenhouse, God bless him for the rule of law actually playing out in our judicial system, playing out the way it should. But make no mistake, that prosecution, I still believe it needs to be sued civilly for trying to destroy that kid's life. That was a reckless prosecution from the beginning. They withheld exculpatory evidence from drone footage from the FBI. There's a lot there. But you asked specifically what could be done. Well, you live in Kenosha. If you guys remember, the governor could have put a stop to this by mobilizing the National Guard early. So I'm going to just say this personally. I'm sorry? Yeah, but not before the 24 hours, right? He was given aforementioned notice, and it was 72, not 24. And Governor Evers could have mobilized the National Guard and saved people's lives. And if you disagree with that, talk to the people of Kenosha that got their businesses burned down. If we have to believe that Evers did everything he possibly could when Kenosha is in rubble, don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining, okay? Because that's just not true. Governor Evers, I believe, is personally responsible for the destruction of the Floyd riots. And I hope the people of Wisconsin do something about that coming into November. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Charlie and Candace. My name's Cameron. One question that I have for you, since there is a possibility that Elon Musk may possibly buy Twitter, do you think he should go for it, or should he start his own social platform? And if he does, would you join it?
Well, if he doesn't get any, and he started his own social media platform, I think a lot of people would join because he believes in free speech. But like we said, I don't think he's going to do that. I think he wanted to plug into Twitter because it was already built. But we'll see. I don't really know. I think we kind of answered what we think what's going to happen with that. But it would be great if he started a social media company.
Thank you, and yeah, we kind of answered it. I'm fully in support of Elon trying. I just don't think he's going to be able to pull it off. Thank you.
Big fan of his. So.
Thank you so much.
All right, we'll be able to take a couple more, so if anyone disagrees, Mackenzie will take care of you.
Hi there.
Okay.
Thank you both for your time. My name's Logan, and I just wanted to see if you had heard about the Milwaukee Public School news this week.
I didn't.
Just get your reactions to that. So they, oh, sorry, try it.
Just remind us. I think it's the
I didn't hear it.
the repealing, then the reinstituting of the masks.
Yeah, in like a 24-hour period, they repealed the mask mandate and then reinstituted it because science changed in a day and a half or something like that. So would just love to get your thoughts on that. Thank you both.
My thoughts on the entire masking of citizens is that they know that people have a short memory, and this is what I mean by that, and why they've been so focused particularly on kids being masked. We know that kids have an effective 0% rate of even having severe symptoms when they get COVID. Effective 0% of children died from COVID. So why are they doing this? Why have children suddenly become the focus on these mask mandates, elementary school kids being masked? The reason is simple, and it goes back to something I said to my husband. We were talking about China one day, and I just said, I don't understand this. You have a nation of 1.3 billion people. Why don't they rise up and fight their government? You know, there's enough of them to win, obviously. And he said, because they have no memory of freedom. What is being attempted right now in the United States is to wipe out memory of freedom. In order to do that, you have to focus on the next generation. You have to focus on young people, right? If you suddenly have children that don't remember what it's like not to mask, they're never going to fight to be unmasked, right? It's why they're wanting to tether onto this. They want people to be used to government controlling every facet of their lives. Example, it's unimaginable to me, because I have no memory of it, that our parents before 9/11 used to be able to just get on the plane. No TSA. Think about that. Think about how crazy that is. They have to take their shoes off, their belts off. They just got on the plane. And I think about that and I go, that's insane, right? But what did the government do? They wanted more power over citizens. They used 9/11 as a mass propaganda campaign and said, this is going to be a temporary thing we're going to do here. What we're going to pass is going to be temporary, but it's going to be for your safety. And you're going to basically give us your DNA when you go through the airports. And of course, because we were traumatized by the images of 9/11 being shown to us over and over again, we didn't really have alternative media back then. So we're all watching those big screen TVs. We said, okay, absolutely, we agree to this. Of course, we should get this passed immediately, without question. And that temporary led to we're still taking our shoes off, and now they really do want a little bit more DNA at these times, right? Right now, the government is doing that all over again. They're making a concerted effort to get the next generation primed for more government control. They are not going to let up 1 inch when it comes to these mask mandates, which is why the Biden administration has just announced that they've magically received another letter from the CDC, and they want the DOJ to take a look at repealing the mask mandates, the airline mask mandates, for a never-ending public health emergency. By the way, if it goes on for 2 years, it's not an emergency. It's the state of things, right? And so that's why we have to fight this tooth and nail. It's why the emphasis is on children, and it's why we cannot give them 1 inch when it comes to this. They're trying to wipe out the memory of freedom in America.
And one thought on that, super quick. Before COVID, the countries that masked people were the least free countries in the world. Countries that put masks on people, Islamic theocratic...
China.
Yeah,
well.
China and Islamic theocratic dictatorships know it's dehumanizing. My whole life, and when Candace and I went to college campuses before COVID was a thing, we would argue against hijabbing women. We argued against it. We thought it was wrong. We thought that it was dehumanizing. I still believe putting masks on faces when there is no epidemiological value at all whatsoever is dehumanizing, and it's bad for the soul and the spirit of an individual. Okay, good question.
Well, Charlie, Candace, thank you both for being here. It's really an honor. Even after everything the school pulled to try to not let this happen, like the tickets and even the fake fire, we really appreciate it. Got a great turnout, so thank you. My question is, with everything that's going on and how quickly downhill you see our country going, do you think we're going to turn that point? Where do you see us in 5 years?
I don't think this country has ever been more conservative, and that might surprise you. What we're fighting right now are bureaucrats. We're fighting a very fringe minority of people who have amassed a tremendous amount of power. They have people like Mark Zuckerberg who just pour hundreds of millions of dollars into an election to determine its outcome. We're fighting an oligarchy. We're not fighting American citizens. We aren't. Honestly, I've been all around this country, and the majority of people don't think that children should be sexualized in the school system. But a loud minority with a lot of power do. And I think that they made a critical error, and this is why I'm so optimistic, when they came for moms. And it's why I talk about the importance. I think they messed up, right? Mothers, and that's why, going back to the beginning of this conversation that we've had today about this idea of women being depressed and suppressed and silenced by men, Granddad was the leader of the household, but Granddad always woke up with Grandma's thoughts, right? Whatever happens, if you ever see the way it works in a marriage, right? The man's the leader, but somehow always what the woman wants kind of happens in the household. There's a reason for that. It's the perfect yin and the yang, and it's women, when you wake us up to something as critical as our children, the mama bear instinct, for those of you that don't hunt, if you don't know this, the mama bear literally fights to the death the papa bears who will come and try to kill her young to make her go into heat again. That's real life for you. If they want the woman to go into heat, the papa bear will kill all of the cubs, and the mama bear will fight to her death to protect the cubs. And I think we're seeing that happen right now in America, because suddenly the moms went, wait a minute, why am I suddenly fighting for my child not to be masked? Why am I suddenly fighting for my child who's perfectly healthy not to receive these vaccine series? Why is my child suddenly learning pornography? You had me. These people were voting for liberals, voting for Democrats. Moms are the ones that are opening the mail. Moms are the ones that are filling out most of the times who their husband are even voting for. You don't want to wake up a mama bear that's been in hibernation. Let me tell you that, okay? Because when she wakes up and she focuses her attention on you, she will fight for the death. And I believe that was a critical error that the left has made, and they are going to make the biggest difference going into this next election cycle.
Let me add to that. I believe we're going to win, and I'll tell you why first, but we must do some things, and I want to just encourage you in Wisconsin to stay on this topic. We have to fix the way we do elections in our country, and we have to fix the way we do elections in Wisconsin. allowing the millions of dollars from Zuckerberg, the mules, the ballots everywhere, the ballot drop boxes. There will be more and more revelations in coming weeks and months. Do not lose focus on this topic. Please, the way we do elections in our country must be reformed. If you are a skeptic on it, watch Dinesh's upcoming movie. It will blow your mind of what happened in this last election. But here's the final reason why I believe we'll win if we act. If you were a Vegas odds bettor and you had one choice or the other, would you want to be on the team with Joy Reid or that weird, creepy eunuch on CNN that can't even take a question from a college kid, or the people that can't define what a woman is or think that men can become pregnant or want black-only dormitories? Or do you want to be on the team with the #1 podcaster in history, Joe Rogan, the world's richest man, one of the most remarked comedians who's an atheist liberal who's now on team anti-woke Bill Maher, the #1 cable news channel in history, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens' team, and the team of reality, truth, beauty, and goodness, the Constitution, history, facts, and things you can prove? Yeah, I'll take the team with those people, and you can keep the eunuch and the race lady on MSNBC any day, and we're going to win, and those people are going to lose. God bless you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you guys so much. God bless you guys, and stay involved.
Fun.
God bless you guys.
I loved the fake fire. It was amazing. I'm so glad we all survived the fake fire.